once again, and I will show you how to do that exercises. If you have not, today I'll show you. Post this session, you can try hands-on this exercise, and if you have any doubt, we'll discuss in the Slack itself, or we can bring that up in the next session. Apart from that, today we'll learn about browser events. We have very good and exciting exercises for you, which you will be doing. We'll learn about HTML input, what are event listeners, how to deal with event listeners, what event listeners actually do to HTML elements. Then what is an event object? We will learn about like HTML input and input event. Then we will actually get started with Qtrip dynamic. Okay, so let me do a quick recap of what we did in the previous session regarding async and await. So async and await is a new way to add asynchronous behavior in JavaScript. Earlier we used promises, right? So instead of using promises, we will be using async await. Now what async does, when we add async, okay, this is not good. Let me get my sandbox done. Sorry for that. Okay, sorry. Cool. Yeah. So today's session, we will have our activities done here. Let's not go into this. Okay. So as we said, when we declare any function and we write a async keyword before it, essentially the return type of that function from whatever it was earlier returning, it gets converted into a promise. So for, let's say I'm having a function, hello world, which would return a string saying hello world. But eventually, if we write a async keyword before this function, as you can see, the function hello world is returning a string. But before that, it was returning, it returns a promise, right? So if I hover over it, now it returns promise. So we did that, like learned that in the previous session. Okay, we have await. What await does, wait until a suspends the execution unless whatever we have done, like the promise that we are executing or the asynchronous behavior, unless and until it is resolved, the next, like the scope won't get transferred, right? So if you remember, guys, earlier, if we had an execution statement just written before await, it would wait until the promise is being resolved, and after that only the next line will get executed, right? So this is what we have learned so far. See, to make any functions like act like a promise, add a async keyword before the declaration. Simple. Now that we actually consume this promise, now how we would consume this promise, the earlier way how we did, we can handle it by using .then, or we can use this await keyword. Now when we are using await, make sure that the function inside which we are using await has to be asynchronous as well. Let me do a quick exercise. So we had two functions. One is greet Rohan and another is greet Sham. Both are returning strings like hello world, I said, right? So it would greet Rohan would return hello Rohan, and greet Sham would return hello Sham. Now what we have to do, we need to make this greet Rohan and greet Sham return promises instead of just simple strings. Okay. So let me quickly do that. Okay. Cool. So I had the starter code here. As you can see, we had a greeting start initially, right? Let me quickly set that up. It was, the file name was session 7 /index.html. Good. So, okay. So what we need to do inside this activities, let me create another folder. Okay. Instead of creating another folder, what we can do, we could write in the same file, right? So here, instead of C, I'll see activities. And in the body, I will link it. I hope everyone remembers this, such a basic thing. So we have /activities. Okay. Activities / okay. It's not inside. Okay, sorry. I haven't made inside. Index.html. Sorry for this, guys. It was cool. So we had activities /index.js. Okay. Hopefully we'll see activities. Let me open the console for you guys. So what do you guys expect? What should it say? So now we are seeing greeting start and greeting end. As you can see in this code, we had greeting start and greetings end. We have declared two functions called as greet Rohan and greet Sham. They are not getting called. Okay. So what we would be doing, we would we would console log because they are returning, right? So we would console log. Yes, give me a second, guys. Okay, let me call greet Rohan. And greet Sham here. Now what they're returning hello Sham and yes. So what we can do, we would write, okay, let me show you quickly what I did before going. Okay, let me save this. Yes, so it's not showing anything because we are not console logging, okay? Let me console log that greet Rohan. Cool. Yeah. Console.log greet Rohan. Okay, sorry for that. We are getting two promises, right? And as you can see, these are in proper order. Hello Rohan and hello Sham. Does it make sense, guys, to what you were expecting? If I would write something like this, const function, sorry, not function. I'll write a function call, and I would write inside that const a equals to await, let's say greet Rohan, const b equals to await greet Sham, and before that here, instead of writing this greeting start here, I'm just writing before here. Okay, we have to make this async because we are writing this function as we are using await keyword, right? So await can only be used inside async. So, and I am here writing console.log greetings end. Okay. Here I'm console logging A, and here I'm console logging B. Let me comment it out. This promises as well, where I am calling inside. Okay, we have everything done. And let me finally call. What we would see? We would see that even if they are returning promises, right? The order of execution remains the same. Does everyone get that? Like, since we are using await, unless and until greet Rohan is being resolved, the scope won't go to this console.log A, or else this like next line. Once it's resolved and console log, it would go do the exact similar thing for greet Sham. Then finally it would return. It would print greetings end. Does that make sense? Cool. +1 in the chat if you understand this problem. Great. So that was like one of the exercises. Let the session go. Okay. Moving on to the next exercise. Okay. I guess everyone is familiar with await keyword. Let me quickly jump into. So this exercise. Now what this exercises ask us, it asks us to print the count of user objects returned from a GitHub API. Now this is a GitHub API, and when I open this API, you can see that we have many username, where an object has like login, ID, node ID, avatar, URL, etc., etc. Right? And we are getting an array of this objects. Now what I want you to do, you need to get this data using fetch. After fetch, what you need to do, you need to calculate what is the length of this array, like how many objects we are getting from this endpoint, right? Which I have not used await. So when do we use await, right? Async. See, I want that function to return a promise. That's why I have used async keyword before. Where did that exercise go? See, here I have written async keyword here, right? We have written async keyword because we want this string not to be as a simple string, but a promise. That's why I wrote async. Now, what I did await is that I am waiting unless this promise gets resolved, right? So here what I did, when we wrote await, it waited unless this greet Rohan promise got resolved, and that resolved data is stored into A. So when I logged A, I did not see a promise. What I see, in output, I saw hello Rohan, right? Does that make sense, Suryanshu? But my promises should have called at last, right? I could not get your question, Ranjan Kumar. See, what I did, there was two asynchronous function which returned me promises. Since I wanted this to return promise, I have added async keyword before it. Now I have made a call function where I wanted to get or call greet Rohan. Since greet Rohan returns a promise here, we want that response to get resolved, and that resolve that and wait until that value is resolved, right? So when it gets resolved, the execution will get suspended. Now, unless it gets resolved or after it gets resolved, the value gets stored inside A and we print it in A. Similarly for B. And as you can see in promises, the order was not particular, right? The order could be like whatever we would have written. Let's say it would print greetings start, greetings end. And if we have resolved it using promises dot then we would have seen it after greetings end. But here you can see that we are getting greetings start, hello Rohan, hello Sham, then greetings end. Cool. Okay, moving on. I was saying you about this exercise, right? So in this exercise, you will hit the API. After hitting that API, you will get data, an array of objects which each individual object represents a GitHub user. Now, what you need to do? Create an asynchronous function that get users, which would fetch the users using this API, right? So inside get users, which is an asynchronous function, we would fetch the users from that API and return the data. In count users, what we would do, we would get that data, check the length, and return the length. And I hope this is clear, right? So get users would get the data, count users is count on it. Now we need to check what that get users should be an asynchronous function, as you can see. Now we need to decide on how to write it, right? So since I will be showing this exercise, let me get started with the code. It's okay, right? +1 in the chat if it's okay. And I'll be starting the code part. Any +1, guys? Cool. Okay, so in activities, I'll create another file. Sorry. So I would write posts.js. Now inside post.js, what I need to do, sorry, we were having, it was not post, it was, really sorry, it was GitHub users, right? So make users.js. Okay. Now since, okay, let me go through this problem once again. We will be creating an asynchronous functions get users. Simple. Let me write that. Async function get users. Okay. Now we need to check, we need to get the data. Now how would we get the data? Let me check. Let me store that into a variable called, what would I call? We can call it, okay, what we can do, you know, again, and let's not make it complex. We have at the endpoint, let me declare the endpoint as to be this API endpoint, right? It should. Now, tell me what this will return, okay? When I'm writing fetch this endpoint, dot, then response would return res.json. Data, return data, and finally a catch block. Ideally you should be writing catch always. I have not been following the guidelines, but yeah, everyone should write catch block. So if we have any catch error, we encounter any error, let's just console. Now, as we know, this would return a promise, right? Now, let me call this function inside const users. Now, we have another, as we said, function const users to return the number of users, right? So we have const user, what it was, method name, count users. Okay, for simplicity, let me make it a simple function instead of arrow key. Now I am getting users data. Await, get users. Now since I'm using await, I got to make this function asynchronous, right? Now let me console log what I am getting. Users. Saving it. Let me call count users. Okay. Now I have users dot. Okay, sorry, I have not marked it. Script src equals to activities slash, it was supposed to be activity slash user. Oh, okay, I did something wrong. I changed, instead of writing here, I wrote, sorry, script src. We have activities slash users.js, and let me comment on this activity block. So we have users.js. Okay. Okay. Now we are getting this data, right? So quickly traversing through what I wrote. This fetch endpoint is the string. So it's fetching the data. Now it's resolving it to a response, and this response had this method .json, right, which you used to call to get the data. That would return another promise, and we are actually returning that promise, right? So whatever we are getting, someone got unmute. Can Srinivas, do you have any doubt? Okay, cool. So we have this data which is being returned. So this data, promise data, is what we are receiving. Now, since we are awaiting until this get users get resolved, and we are using await, right? We can't write await outside, like what the code, whenever we are using await, has to be inside a synchronous function. So we wrote asynchronous. Does that make sense? We are not calling data. Whatever is returning, okay, this is users, is actually the data. Whatever it is returning, right? That is the data. So what is returning? It's returning a promise, right? Which is this, resolved promise. We are not calling data. Which data? We are not calling data. Okay, yes, we are actually, I'm showing you the data right now, but actually what we would be printing, right? We would be getting the length of that variable. So inside count users, what we would do, since we are getting the data, we need to get the length of that data, right? So what I would do, len, let's say, and I would write data.length. Sorry. Now if I print length, and save it. Does that make sense, guys? Now I need to return it. So I'm returning a length. Now this is an asynchronous function, and I need to showcase. So I am directly calling it. But here earlier, since I was console logging, it was showing me. But now since I'm returning, I need to store it in a I need to store it in a variable, right? So I would write, let's say, let me write a arrow function this, print total users, which got to be, okay, I'll tell you. So we have total users. Now I am writing await. Can anyone say why I am writing await here? Count users, and now I'll console log total users. People, can anyone say why did I write await here? Write in the chat if you understand. Pages. Yes, but main reason I wrote await because we are dealing with asynchronous functions, right? So it's returning me a length, which is a promise in itself. So I want that promise to get resolved. That's why I wrote await. Does that make sense? So since I'm writing await, it has to be asynchronous as well, right? Cool. I'm printing total users. And here I'm writing, I'm calling on print total users. Sync. Okay, we did get synchronous because we are awaiting for get users to fetch the data, right? So get users returns always a promise because we are calling the fetch. So we have to await in order to get it, right? And since we are using await, we have to make it asynchronous. Yes, fetch will give a promise. Okay. You want to see why? We can do this. Let me see. We're getting. We're not. See, we can get it. You can make it asynchronous. Yeah, it would ideally give us that. So yeah, we don't need to use asynchronous. Does that make sense? Asking about the get user. Where it is. It's returning a promise, right? And we need that promise to get resolved. So we need to wait for that. We could have used dot get users dot then, or we could use await. But here we are using await. That's why we need to write await because we need to wait unless it's resolved. And since we are using await, that entire function got to be asynchronous, right? Yes, it's gonna return a promise, but that promise needs to get resolved, right? We need to get the resolved value, which is the entire data array, right? That's why we are awaiting. We got the data length. Now we returned a length. Now since it was asynchronous, and it's returning a length value. That's why we wrote await. So yes, one of the disadvantage of using async await is that we might get into declaring this extra function, but yeah, that should be. There's a returning a promise. Is count username? Count user. Yes. Returning a promise. Yes, it's returning a promise of length. Yep. Promise. Exactly. It would return a promise because it has to be written inside asynchronous, right? This console log it. You want to console log the what? Okay. So it's creating confusion. Let me directly call it and console log it instead. Okay. Let me console log count users. It's promise, right? Does that make sense? logically, right, guys? So why we write asynchronous? Why we are waiting for that promise to get resolved? How, like, when we write whenever we write asynchronous before any function, it returns as a promise, right? And we want that promise to get resolved, so we are writing await, so that the promise, since we are getting, you know, this might seem a little daunting, but logically, if you approach this problem and think what is the return type, how to handle it, I feel you can solve that problem. Does that make sense, guys? +1 in the chat if you understand why I wrote so many async, await, why it's returning promises. Yes, it's returning a length promise actually. Because see, if you are writing a lot, okay. So what you could, if you want, okay. See, since it's an asynchronous function, it would always return a promise, right? And we need to resolve for this length. So when we wrote, give me a second, I need to turn off. Okay, what was the question? Yes, it will return a promise of length because it is an asynchronous function, right? Asynchronous function will always return a promise. So we need to wait for this length as well and resolve this length, promise to get the count users. Does that make sense, Anurag? If you have any doubts, we'll continue that later. We are almost done with exercises. A quick question. I hope people can see my screen. So here we have an add post to server, which resolves and console logs the response, resolves this object, right? And we have the similar thing using await. Now, note that the order in which the output appears. Can anyone say for left, what would be the output order, and for right, what would be the output order? So you can write left output order, like what would be like start, this object. Instead of entire object, you could write just object, right? And end, and what would be the order of for here? Okay, I'll answer the question later in Srinivas. Let me move on. Okay, it was already there, right? But yeah, I'll want you to give me a quick output of this. Totally. Great. Yes, that's it. Let me run that for you. Okay. It was we had. I hope this question is kind of visible. I have limited screen size, so sorry for that. But yeah, let me quickly show you the output. Yeah. Okay, I need to set it up before that. Give me a second. Okay. I guess I'll show you later this part because I don't have the method ready right now. But people who have written the correct answer, let me shout it out loud. Maybe they're in this mode. Yes. Anyone whose answer differ from Ranjan's answer? If yes, why? If not, why not? Anyone write like if this question is visible, right? Only one person has written answer. Can I expect any other answers, please? Okay. So yes, moving on. I hope people are typing, but until then, let me tell you. Yes, the answer would be right. Since I already told you, right? Await holds suspend the execution unless that promise gets resolved. Whereas promises, when we use then for promises, it does not do that. So the order will remain the same for like in which it is written like start, the result and end. Whereas in case of promises, it would start, end and promise. +1 in the chat if you get it. Okay. Cool. There was this asynchronous. Okay, we did this code, right? No? Okay, we solved this code Kanye here, where we were calling it using like we are fetching the code and then solving and then we find it, right? Using then function to resolve that promise. So instead of this, we could use async await. How we could do that? Let me quickly demonstrate that. Instead that. So we are using then, right? But now what I will do, await fetch code because it was returning a promise. Actually, I tried that. So this earlier this asynchronous keyword was not there. So don't get confused. I'll be writing this in. I was trying it out, so I forgot to remove that. So yeah. I'll go to down. Simple, right? Earlier we were writing so many codes, but now if I show you, code it was session 6. Session 6. That works, right? So what earlier we did, we are returning the promise. Now, since then when we get the promise, we were using this dot then function to resolve it. And once we have the data, we were calling add code to dot. Here, instead of writing it dot then function, what we did, we awaited until this fetch code got resolved. And once it got resolved, we had that response, like what it was returning. What it was returning the object from that API, right? So if I console log, what we are getting from you would get that code. The result promise resulted into this code, and we are passing res.code, right? So when we passed the code to this, it added to the DOM by calling this text content by changing the text content of the para, and voila, we could see new codes every time we refresh. Does that make sense, guys? +1 in the chat. We should move on to the next topic. So guys, so we have browser events, right? Does anyone, okay, before asking you that question, let me give you a quick example of what things happen. Now, what's an event? Now, an event is the signal that something has happened. For example, if you see, if I hover on this, the color, background color got changed to a slighter grayish color, right? We could see a pop-up saying present to a meeting. Then something is happening, right? When we are hovering or the mouse click goes into that area, something is happening, some changes is happening into the UI. Similarly, if you see, when this page loads, we have this pop-up coming. Let me refresh that. Okay. Yeah. So see, all DOM nodes generate such signals. Here are some of the examples which I will show. But when we can generate some functionality to be happen when we, let's say, hover on this. Say, for example, when we hovered, this background color got changed. When this show. So whenever I enter into a new website, you would say some alert message might pop up saying that, okay, the expiry date has come, or let's say your subscription has failed, or saying that welcome to our website, right? So these are all events that are getting happened. So what an event is a signal that something has happened, like mouse click, mouse move, or form submitted. That event got triggered, led to some changes, right? Which we are seeing. Now, what are different types of events? For example, when I click on present, an event is getting triggered. Or let's say when I'm hovering over it, on mouse over, some changes is happening, right? So on mouse over is an event. When we are submitting a form, that submit part is an event. When we are opening any website and initially the DOM gets loaded, that is also an event. So we have many types of event. I hope you are getting like what an event is. So what an event is a signal that something that gets happened with when we do something. Now, what are the something part? It could be a mouse click, it could be a mouse move, or let's say, when initially the DOMs get loaded. Now, to react on events, we have an handler. Now, since we are having different types of events, we want some tasks to get done. Let's say when I am hovering on something, I want that functionality for, let's say, if I am clicking on a login event, right? And my form got successful. Then we want, after a successful event, we want that login to vanish and like log out button pops up, right? So some mode of like change is happening, right, in my UI. Now, HTML elements have on type attributes to specify the handlers. But yeah, so we have different types of, I hope everyone understands what an event is. We have different types of event and we want some functionality to get executed when certain types of event happen. For example, when I hover on this, let's say, okay, let me give you a quick example. I'm showing you. Okay, so let me declare here an H1 saying that hello, and we have this on click, right? And on click, I want to just write console.log instead that write a function. Yeah. And inside, how would I write? I want to write the script. Yes, so we want this function. Hello to the easy. Now, whenever I am clicking on this hello, can you see the console log is getting print? So here on click is the event. What I am doing, I'm just console logging. I'll show you in later stage what methods do we have. But on click is an event handler. What it is doing when I'm clicking on this hello, it's executing this hello function. Now what this hello function is doing, it's just console logging hello world. Does that make sense, guys? What I'm saying? I hope everyone understands what a browser event is, and we have this handler. So here we will be how we will be adding an handler, but here I'm showing you through this on click. Hello world is getting printed, right? So I hope it makes sense. Where is this check? Does it make sense, guys? What an event is? I hope everyone get it. +1 in the chat if it does. Sorry, I forgot to mention the +1 in the chat. Not everyone did not understood. Like, was it? I'm not seeing any +1. Okay, let me tell you again what an event is. So, event is a signal that something has happened, like a mouse click or a mouse hit. Here, in this example, what is the event that I have triggered is that on mouse click, console log hello world would be printed. Does that make sense? Simple. We have different types of event, but don't get confused with what these are. I'll show you with example. Here, I am only using this click event, right? Does that make sense, guys? What is all there's some issues. Okay. I hope we will use different types of events. Here, I have just used the click event. Also, how we can add an handler to this event. And what an handler is, I'll explain it to you. But before that, let me quickly share what an HTML input. So we have a tag, right? Input, which can be used to add buttons, which we can show, like give us this field to ask the users to give input. Let me show you what an input is. So we have this input HTML element, right? I would write type equals to text equals to email and placeholder and then so we have this HTML HTML input where we can write anything. Now, when I write anything, like in case of forms, right? When we are writing anything in the form and submitting it, the values what we are entering, it gets stored somewhere or something happens, right? So HTML input elements are a way in which we could ask for users to write something or let's say get input elements, right? So I hope I'm not confusing you. So what input elements does, we can have different input elements, right? Here we can have text, we can have email. Now when I write email, let me create an, we can have email input, we can have text input, we can have password input. Okay. We can write email. We have different forms of different varieties of input, right? When we write, let's say we are writing password. Whenever we input password, you see that all the characters that we are writing, it's not showing in that way. We are getting this dot dot, right? So this is something implicit in Java HTML passwords, like HTML input, which with the type passwords. But yeah, whenever you use passwords, make the type as password so that we have this auto completion that will happen, that our browser provides. But yes, so we can have passwords, we can have different buttons as well. I'll show you buttons as well. Input type equals to buttons. Guess it isn't back here. Okay, so we have different types of input. Now, but a better way to use, okay, so we have the semantic HTML input tags, which we actually ask, which is really preferred instead of using input. Now, why we are using semantic HTML input tags? The HTML, for example, for another example of like HTML input tags is using button. Now, we saw that we could make button by writing input type equals to button. Also, if you could use button, this button HTML tag which we have, we can also reproduce the similar thing. But it is suggested that instead of using input type equals to button, we suggest to use button. Now, there are multiple reasons to use HTML input tags, mostly because of SEO reasons like search engine optimization, readings, etc. But you will mostly using this button tag instead of using input type equals to button, right? Along with that, we have this handle click function which execute each time after the user clicks the button. I'll show you that. But before that, let's discuss what event listeners is. Give me a second, guys. Okay. So we discussed about HTML inputs, right? So what are handlers? Now an handler, or we can say handler is a function, but what are event listeners? Now whenever any event gets triggered, like whenever we are clicking something, or let's say we are hovering on, mouse is getting hovering on that particular element, HTML tag, or any paragraph, or let's say a heading, it wants to execute something. Now we need to, like, all the logic gets inside a function, and we need to add this, like, bind this functionality with that event. Now, how do we do that? We do that using add event listeners. Now, what add event listeners does, it binds it binds an event with an handler. Now, what an handler? Handler is a function, is a callback function which will be executed when that event is getting triggered. Does that make sense? For example, if you could not visualize something, so what is happening in this example, when I'm hovering on, let's say, this, present to a meeting, what it is happening, the background color is getting changed, right? So we would have we have attached this functionality where the background is getting changed inside a function, and it is getting binded with this hover event, right? Let me show you that. I'll give you a simple example where, let's say, I'll give you this example. So in JavaScript, how do we bind an event with an handler? So we have this button, okay? And this button, it's written click me. And it has an ID, same button. Now what I want to add an event that whenever I click on this click me, it would print, it would console log the title, or let's say here console log click. Okay, so how would I do that? So we had this click me. When I would, okay, so whenever I would click this, you can see clicked is getting console log, right? So how did I do that? I declared this HTML element called as add to do button. Now I added an event listener. Let me write it once again. So what I did, I added this event listener to this HTML element, right? So there's this method called as add event listener, which should take a string. Now this string can be many things. As you can see, we have blur, we have cancel, we have change, we have close, we have copy, we have drag, lot many events, right? For now, let's select this click event. So whenever I would click this add to do button, what it would do, it would execute this callback function, right? Now, what this callback function does, it says that click me, click. Simple, it's not complicated. If I would like to add another event listener, what I could do, I would write add event listener, let's say on hover. Okay, let me use mouse. when I hover on this, it would write mouse over is happening, right? So what essentially I did, this callback essentially is called the handler. I have attached this handler to this event. What is this event? This event is called as mouse over. So whenever I would hover on that element, add to do button, this handler will get executed. Does that make sense, guys? Adding callback function in the add event listeners. I could not get your question, Ms. Vijay. Is your doubt same or it got clear? Okay, let me repeat this. So we have this HTML element called as click me. And the click me, what I wanted to do, I want to do something. For right now, when I would hover on click me, it would say that mouse got hovered. Or if I want to click on this button, it would say click. We can add multiple event handlers to this, but right now I'm focused on two. When I would click on click me, it would say that click, and whenever I would write, now whenever I would hover on that mouse, it would say that mouse over is happening. So how did I do that? I first got that HTML element, right? How do I get that element? We had a specific ID assigned to this click me. I fetched that HTML element by using document.getElement by ID. That's what we have already studied, right? So once I get that element, I have attached an handler, a callback function here to this event. What is this event? This event is called as click. We had different types of event, right? If I could show you, we are having play, pause, play, transition, run, abort, blur, cancel. We're different types of event. Let's say we have like DOM content loaded, as you see it in the saw in the previous slides. We have submit, we have mouse over, we have click. These are all events. Now, whenever this event will happen to this HTML element, something we want to do here, whenever we are clicking on that to do mouse button, click is getting executed, right? So we are console logging click. Similarly, if we want to have to execute, mouse over is happening whenever we would hover on that, when our mouse would get over that button, click me, it would write. Okay, I have removed it. That's why it's not showing. See, the number is increasing, right? If you could see. Okay. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, I'll show table button. Okay, that makes it open. People, did you get it? Okay. What is the HTML part? Can you paste the HTML part as well? I'll see that later. So what event listeners do, it would listen to the event that whenever this event gets triggered, it would execute the handler. So what we can do this by using add event listener, right? So mainly what I told you, we have this add event listener, which would bind this HTML, whatever it is being used with this HTML element, right? So that HTML element, it would bind this event with this handler. So whenever this event gets fired or this event happens, the handler get executed. Does that make sense? My voice is breaking. Is it better? Is is it happening only for Biswajit, or my voice is okay? It's proper. Biswajit, I guess it's your internet connection. Can you check it? Yes, I'll show you where we can add event listeners. So generally, for example, if I want, let's say, here, as you can see, if I want to do something, when I, let's say, submit a form, right? Then we would attach this whenever like we write a form. For example, we are having this form to for a school admission, and we are giving all our details. And when we enter submit, we want some functionality like here, all the data that we have written in that form, right, to get submitted. So here, what we would do on here, instead of right click, we would write, on submit. It would submit all the data. It would get all the data, which we will see in the next session, how we can submit or how we will use forms and everything. Validation and form validation, we are covering it in the next session. But whenever we would submit it, it would do something. Here, it would submit the data to backend, or let's say store the data somewhere and do some execution. Does that make sense? It's necessary to use callback functions. No, we need to pass a callback function. So whatever logic we'll be writing, inside this function, right? So, yes. Biswajit, I would, okay, let me complete this. Once the session finishes, I'll solve it, okay? Yes, we can have multiple event handlers. So we can have multiple event handlers. And like, if we have like, let's say it's listening to this click event, right? It can listen to multiple events, like a single HTML element can listen to multiple events. Here, as you can see, it's listening to click as well. It's also listening to mouse over, right? Yes. We can write on click for the same, right? While using, yes, on click is a shorter format for, doing this, but yeah, we can write on click as well.
Yeah, quick question. Like instead of using, like we can use either on click and add event listener. Why should we use add event listener instead of on click? What is the difference?
On click is only one event, right? So it's only the click event. Add listeners have a variety of different events. We can use, as you said, we can use on click whenever only we are dealing with click event. But if you want to, let's say, use mouse over, we would be using add event listener to for this binding event to this handler for that particular HTML input. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a very exciting and interesting question. I hope people do this. So what we will be doing, we will be having two buttons, okay? Now what these two buttons would do, one is increase, another is decrease. Now, whenever I would write plus, enter, like click on plus, it would increase the value. Here we have initial value as 0, right? So whenever I would click on plus, it would increase the plus, increase the value with 1. And whenever I click on this negative, like minus button, it would decrease the value. Does that make sense? So what we would be doing, let me break down this problem for you. Okay, let me create another session activity. So let's put that inside. We have, let's say, is that question clear, guys? I would want you to increase the value whenever I click on that plus value, and I would like the value would decrease with 1 whenever I click on that minus button. There is a counter. Now inside counter, what I want to do. So we had 2 buttons, right? So let me write that code and like the skeletal code, and give me a second. So what we will be having? So we would have h1. We are having a counter that h. There is this number, right? So what I would want you need to get the value of this number, right? How do you get that? Through this ID, I want you to fetch the value what is inside this h3 with the particular ID of count, get the value, the text input. Now the text input value would be a string, right? So you need to parse int and convert into integer. Then you need to write 2 functions which would increase and decrease the values. And you need to add event listeners to this 2 buttons. I'll comment it out. Let's do DTM. This is the plus. So we have this plus. So what I would want you to do here in counter.js, you would be having a function get count. What get count would do? Get count or get the count text context. Sorry. HTML. HTML, or we can say H1 it was, right? H2. HTML element with ID equals to, for starters, please paste this code. Paste this code in your chat, guys. Oh, sorry, I have pasted the code in the chat. Please copy that and do it in your sandbox. So whatever, okay, first you need to write a function called as get count, which should get the text content of the HTML element with ID as count, right? It would get the text content. Then it would return the count value. Another, you need to write an increase function. It would increase the value obtained from get count. Okay. What decrease would do? Okay, it would first change the, also, it would increase the value and change the text content, right? What decrease would do? Decrease would be another function which would decrease the value obtained from the get count change after increasing the value with in increase it would increase the value, in decrease it would decrease the value. After decreasing whatever number is there, it would change the text content for that. Not completed. And then you need to add event listeners to the ink button. Decrease button, right? At event listeners, what would be the event listener here would be whenever we would click that, execute, increase, yeah, execute. Like the handler, right? The callback function should execute this. Increase and here decrease. I hope I have broken down this problem for you. I'll share you the screen as well, what you need to do. I hope both the questions and no helper code is visible. I'll give you 5 minutes to do it. Is anyone like not able to get the idea? Okay, someone already. Yeah, that's cool. Great, Yogesh. Yes, fabulous. Anurag also did that. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, great, Anurag as well. Someone else did. Naga Yogesh also did. Oh, great job, Anurag. Great. Plus button, minus button, counter 0, increment. Yes, it should be. Decrement decreases. Great. Sujay Suryavanshi. That would work. Anyone able to do it? Vishwapriya? What do? Are you able to understand the question? Are you able to frame it? Like how you would write increase function, decrease function, and how you would write call it inside that callback function, and like how to bind this event with this event handler. So, what are the participants here? Check. Akash, Aditya, Ankya, Akash, okay. Aniket, Biswajit, Vishwapriya, can you share the code if you understand it, right? Like, have you started coding? Subrani, Yash, Yogesh, any difficulty in understanding the question? Rahul, Ranjan, Santosh, Manoj, Rishi, Dilip, Biswajit, Basu, Ayushi, Bharat, doing. Okay. Yeah. Let me start as well. Uh, so, yeah. Let me declare. Let's go. People who are not able to do it, please follow me. Let element by ID. We have this count, right? And we want that text content. Now we got that text content, but whenever we are getting that text content, it would give us the string value. We need to get the integer part of it. So how do we do that? We would return the integer part, right? So we would do pass. Now I have got get count. Now let me create constant increase as well. For people who have declared a local variable by using let and increase that also works. Okay. This is just some different code about it. So we are declaring this current count. What is the current count? How I would get that? I would get from get count, right? The get count would have the current count, and then I would write document.get element by id count, and I would say change the text content equals to the current. Oh, this is how I wrote into this. Because const current count equals to get count. For people who are having issues with my keyboard, I hope they are feeling fine because I have changed my keyboard. Was the keyboard stroke sound disturbing? Very much disturbing. I did not realize that. Sorry. Yes. 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 Minus 1. Then I will get the increase. So I'm just going to declare declare a function which I declare as now. And then event listener, right click this one is okay. So I created an increase button. I got the button from the button ID int btn, as you can see here. Then I have added this event listener with this click handler, tick event with this increase handler. Similarly, decrease button, I have gotten the decrease button from the document. Then I have added an event listener. Like using event listener. Sorry, using this method add event listener, I have binded this click event with this decrease function. Now, if I would save it, refresh. Where is this syntax? That is. Then, anything I have missed? Increase, ink button, click, I have handled. Goodness. Okay. Issue. Maybe the issue what? Was anyone able to find out what was causing the issues of frequent? Maybe. This should already work. Unexpected. Could not understand that. Sure.
H3 closing,
Active.
like opening tag is missing, I guess.
Oh, where?
H3.
H3.
Open tag you have to close, right?
Where I have
ID.
closed it. Before ID, I had.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I had it. Smart. I guess activities, it's inside activities and I have like, okay, activities slash pointer. The smart person. Yeah, so I was linking everything. I hope it got clear. See, if I am entering class, it's increasing the value. The decrease, it's decreasing the value. Essentially, I'm going it once again. What I did, I created a function called as getCount, which took the text content from the count, right? So earlier we had declared it to be a static 0. So it took 0, it parsed in, it converted the string 0 to an integer 0. So whenever we would call getCount, it would return us that value instead of string, the integer value. Then with current count, whatever the value is, we would add 1, right? And we would change that, you would change the text content of that count ID. Or here we have the h3, right? Count has h3. The value is increased after getting the value. And similarly, for decrease, we are decreasing. These are the two functions that got binded with this event click. So increase button got binded with this click event, which would execute this increase function, right? Increase. And let's say decrease, decrease button. I hope that got clear. Yes, thank you for pointing to it. It was the counter.js linking that caused the issue. Guys, everyone understand what I did? Any doubt? Any problem? Working great. Great. Okay. Let's Okay, let me actually get you started with Qtrip dynamic. After that, we will do the rest exercises. These are very small exercises. I'll just quickly get you through this so that you can refer it. Yeah. So post this call. Did anyone actually check out Qtrip dynamic before they have before attending today's session? Because Async Await was one of the part which kind of covered, but today we completed it. Did anyone get started? No, okay, no problem. So, okay, in Qtrip dynamic, you will be working on this, you will be creating this. So, let me show that. The mouse motion is it? Okay, yeah. So, you'll be making something like this. The UI would look something like this, where you will be having different, cards showing different places. When you select one card, you will be able to filter out by using 0 to 2, 2 to 4, different types of filters you can apply. Here, let's say I'm applying 2 to 6, then we are viewing all those places which comes into this category of 2 to 6 hours, right? Which has the duration between 2 to 6 hours. Now, once I select, I can similarly go for adding, cycling category as well. I can clear it. Once I select it, okay, I have. So once you select it, you will get this form type view. With this left-hand side, you will be having a carousel. Right-hand side, you will be having a form. Let's say I am writing my name. And once you select in which date you are going and how many people we are going, so I'm writing 1 and reserve it. It would print into the success. And when you go on, it shows that sold out, right? Because I just booked it. Now, when I go to this, as you see, the UI got changed. This sold out is popping up and this form is no longer visible, right? We have some description available. And when I click on this click here, we have like earlier, I booked this room. Now, later, I booked this, right? So I can visit adventure. I can see it. We have different pages, like we have homes, we have reservation, what we did. So in Qtrip dynamic, this is what you will be working on. Let me let you go through the sample code as well. Okay, yeah. So this is the stuff. So we would be having two folders, backend and frontend. The backend code, you don't need to touch it. We have this backend. Like, let me just quickly give you an overview. You just don't need to understand very specifically what this backend is doing, but quickly showing you what we have in backend. So we have the server JS, which is exposing our route cities, which has all the city data, right? So we have this random data, which is being exposed through this endpoint cities. We have adventures endpoint. We have adventures detail endpoint, reservations, and adventures. You don't need to essentially understand what they are doing. You just, what you need to do if you're doing it using Cryo Workspace, you need to install all the package, right? So what it, so we have like, so you have backend and frontend. You need to go into backend, install everything by using npm install. Once you install everything, you would start the server. Make sure that, okay, when you start the server, it would get started in this port, right? No server.js, whatever port is mentioned. So we have, okay. So it will get exposed in 8081 port. Let me quickly show you. npm start 8082. This port is dependent on process.env. Yeah. So yeah. So essentially the server would be in 8082 port. Your front end would be listening to this server, right? So in this front end folder, you will be having a conf index.js. Make sure that whatever port your server is running in, it's the same port. Okay, so it's listening to the same server. So make sure this 8082 or whatever it is matching whatever the server is when you do npm start. Make sense? Now we in modules, you have all these files where you need to do all the changes and do the activities. We have like sectioned every functionality into different functions with comments added to it, what you need to do. Once you go through the website, you will get that. But let me give you a quick overview. What we have, for example, get city from URL. You need to extract the city ID from the URL's query param and return it. Okay. So this is actually the solution part I'm showing. Let me open the. Yes, this is the stuff. So you will be having the stubs, right? So yeah, you need to fill in the spec cities functions, which would do this functionality: fetch cities using the backend API and return the data. Similarly, add city to DOM, init methods, and like we have the modules are written, right? So you need to all create the modules according to the file. Let me give you an overview of what it is. So okay. Okay. So this will be your Qtrip dynamic. As I showed you, this is the UI that you will be building. The UI part is done, but you will be adding more JavaScript functionality to it. You will be creating this page, then adding this functionality, how it would show sold out. Then we have given you a small overview about the background. Don't get confused with that. It's very simple. We have also broken down the steps, that how you can start your workspace, how to start the backend server, etc., etc. Please watch through this intro video. Then also we have written tests, right? So let me show you. So we have written some tests. So when you will write, so you need to run the test as well. So what would happen? Initially, all the tests will fail, but later, when you write your functionality and then commit it, all this test will pass because it's going to check like whatever code you are writing, it's doing the similar exact functionality that it's asking for. So we have front end, like you got an overview, right? How to do that. Most of the steps has been broken down and you can see that in the description itself. Just quickly giving you an overview of what all you will be going through. Like as I said, the city's endpoint that is being exposed in the server file. Then we have, we have insert city cards, how to insert in Chrome. Then there will be some assessment that you'll be doing. Then how to use this REST API, how to, extract this query as we saw earlier, as we did that in the session itself, right? We'll be writing clear by duration, filter by duration, filter by category, how to filter that. Yes, essentially these are all the exercises that you will be doing. I'll write what are the modules you need to complete in the course itself. Today, you just need to get started and get familiar and at least check out this Q-Trip dynamic. If you have not enrolled in it, this is the link that you should use to get enrolled. Yes. Cryo.do magic. Okay, this should be on. So I'll edit that post session. Let me share that link as well. Okay. Well, let me check. Okay, I'll confirm that what is for people who have not accepted it. I'll confirm that. I guess the link should have been changed, but I'll confirm that with Nabhan and write it. People who have registered, they can directly get started. You can write Q-Trip dynamic and enroll in it, but yeah. So this was a quick overview of Q-Trip dynamic. So yeah, we have got some time. Let me continue with where we left off. So we completed this counter, right? So now we'll be doing this exercise. I hope people understand this. After the session, you'll be starting with Q-Trip dynamic, right? +1 in the chat if you got a real overview of what you need to do to get started with Q-Trip dynamic. For that link, who has not registered, I'll fix that link. It will be available. I'll fix that. So okay, we have another activity here. So in this activity, we'll use the starter code. I'll show you. Inside the first script tag, try to select the heading element and print its text content. So give me a second, please. Okay, so what you would be doing, this is for this. So what you need to do, you will create a heading. Let's say I am creating H1 heading, writing okay, and I have given that some ID. Now what you need to do, you need to get this heading element and We need to attach an event listener to the document, which is triggered when the DOM content is loaded. Now we need to attach an event listener where earlier we are using click event. There is an event called as DOM content load. Let me paste that in the chat itself. So this is an event. When this event happens, you need to print text content of that heading. Okay. So you need to fetch the element using the get element by ID, document.get element by ID. Once you get that element, you need to get that text content as well and show that in console, right? And when you should do that? When the DOM content is loaded. So saying it again, you need to create a heading. After creating that heading, we need to register for DOM content loaded. Once the DOM is being loaded, and also this DOM content where you need to add, you would be adding that to document. Instead of the particular HTML element, you'll be adding document.add event listener with DOM content loaded, like how we wrote click, right? Instead of click, you'll be writing DOM content loaded. So this event get executed like whenever our page loads, right? Whenever our DOM will be loaded, whatever handler is given to it, that gets executed. I have pasted the DOM content loaded. So you need to declare this heading in your chat. I'm sending that in the chat. You need to declare a function, or let's say add event listener, which will listen to document when the document gets loaded. It will execute with a function slash it's the handler. The handler would print the text content of the header. Right? So you would write essentially something like document dot add event listener something, then some function. Now what goes inside here? What goes inside here? Please. I hope you understand what you need to write. This is something that you will be doing. Pasting that inside the chat. This is the question. Inside the script tag, you can write inside the script tag or create another, external JS file and link it. But yeah. So whenever the DOM content gets loaded, it would print text content of that DOM, like particular heading with the given ID. Does that make sense? +1 in the chat if you understand the question. 0 if you don't understand. I'll repeat it once. I don't understand the question, right? I did not understand the question. Okay. Okay, sure, no problem. So, okay, you need to attach an event listener to the document. You need to attach an event listener to the document. That's why I wrote document. Initially, we would add an event listener to a particular HTML element, right? Like in this case, there was this increase button. But here I'm asking you to add an event listener to the document itself. So you'd be essentially writing document.add event listener. Instead of click, earlier how we used, right? There is an event called as content loaded. So you would write the code here, like you do something like whenever this DOM content is loaded, like whenever we have added this event listener, that whenever this DOM is loading, right, we would execute this functionality. Now, inside this functionality is what we need to do. You need to print the text content for the heading. You need to get the heading, fetch that from the, get element by ID. After get the text content and print it inside console. Rishi, Basu, do you understand now? Add an event listener to the document, which would print the text content for the heading. The skeleton of this function or the functionality that I am asking, or this task would look something like this. So inside this function, you need to get the text content of the heading. Does that make sense? Okay. Rishi, do you understand? Rishi? Are you still on the call? Okay. Yeah. When you are done with your code, please paste your code in the chat. Did anyone do it? Okay. Okay. I hope everyone was able to do it. Let me quickly show you that. Okay. Next. I hope it was simple, right? What you need to do, document. Heading. Great. Now I need to get the text content. Text content. I can console that. Heading this. Oh, I can directly go to heading. So whenever I refresh the page, event is if I write anything else then this is given. Okay. So whenever the DOM is getting loaded, right? See, initially you won't see this, but when it got loaded, we are getting this console, right? That's what DOM content loaded. Sure, Anurag, share your code. What is happening? And then just the DOM content loaded. Okay. Oh, good. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, it's getting document. Can you share the session? Sorry, the code itself. Mhm. Okay. Cool. Anurag, please hold on for 5 minutes before I wrap our session. Let me quickly tell you about this two functionalities. One is what are event. Okay, we covered event listeners. What in an event object and the input. Yeah, thank you. So, so what is an event object? Now, as you saw this handler, right? So the handler callback accepts a parameter which is called as an event object. So earlier we would be writing empty function like functions without any arguments, right? We would write this empty arguments. Essentially, we can pass an event object. So this empty, sorry, the handler callback, actually this callback function that we are having, right? It accepts a parameter which is called as event object. Now the event object contains all the property related to the event. Like whoever triggered that event, it would contain all the information about it. Just in case, here we have like what caused this event. Let's check that. Oh, we are not console. Let me console. Let's check. Cool. So we are getting an event object. So what that event now? Event object has a number of properties. Since it would say that what type of event it was. Since we used DOM content loaded, we have type as DOM content loaded. We have path, we have return value, we have target, which most of the time we will be dealing with this event target. And this target has lot many properties, right? Just like dot type, children, body, etc., etc. So we will be dealing a lot, many times with this event object. Let me repeat myself. The handler callback actually accepts an event object, and the event object contains different types of properties. Using the target property, we can access the properties of the DOM element to which this event is attached to. So if I console log event.target, so whatever it is attached to, right? Here we have attached it to document. So you would get the document. So we would get that element. Let's say if I want to showcase this. Okay. Next my button. Equals to document dot get element by id. We have delete. Okay. So we had lot many properties. If you could see, we had btn, btn, lg, blue classes attached to this button, which has the ID btn. Now I have binded a event click, which on happening would print us the target ID and target class, right? So let me quickly show you how it actually shows. So that, okay. So whenever I would click on this button, I got this three things. Oh, sorry, I got this two properties. First one, which is what is the ID? Since we are printing ID, if you could see, this is the ID, and this is the class. Okay. Just to make sure. When I would click, this is the ID btn, and this is the class btn, btn, lg. Like whatever class it has been assigned, that HTML element would have been assigned, right? It would print all those values. Now, if I want to, let's say, print the entire target, just to quickly show you what else we are getting along with this class and type. So I would print event dot target dot target. Sorry, it's getting a little bit stretched. I'll just take 2-3 more minutes. See. Okay. We are getting that HTML object, right? The HTML element itself, it's getting print. I hope it's getting clear. Event.target, it has the ID, it has lot many other functionalities also. There's a key, class name, console. Okay, it's not. Event.target. Yes, it has a dispatch event, it has an add event listener. We can do a lot many things, right? Currently, I'm showing you that ID and class name, but it has a lot many functionalities as well. So if I write just event, so we would have a target. Right. Target has this access key, this so many properties. Can you see, guys? Disabled or not, draggable or not. What is the first file? What is the ID? What is the inner HTML? What is the inner text? So many properties are available when we write event, right? So event object is essentially the object which is passed into this handler. And it has all the details of that HTML element which triggered it. Make sense? So to create an HTML box, we can use HTML. Moving on, we have this text input. Now, how we can create a text input? We have this HTML element called as input, through which we can create input elements. How do we write input? We write input, and we have so many attributes like ID, we have something, we have class name, we have type, we have name, we have so many things, right? Let's see. Text, class name, text input. Text. So we have lot many things. So this will create an input element. Let me show another property called as placeholder. Placeholder, what it does, gray color, this slightly light color text element will get showed, right? Like whenever we write something in text boxes, you might have seen, like enter your email, enter your password. This value is written inside the placeholder. Enter text. So whenever I write and save it, this could be shown. I hope it's visible. So this input HTML element has some attributes which you could modify the behavior. For example, there is a type, there is a placeholder, name, value. So value will be the value that is inside the input, like whatever I write. Like if I write Anisha, then I can get Anisha by writing this HTML element dot value, right? Similarly, we have name, placeholder, type. We have different types of input element. The way I wrote text, right? We have checkbox. We have buttons. We have lock buttons. Okay, I changed the text. So we're getting a checkbox, right? Similarly, we have different types of input. Okay, let me quickly tell you about the input event. So what's an input event? So to listen to this input, let's say we have entered anything, or we are clicking on this input element, or we are doing something to this input HTML element, right? We can listen to this event by having this. Similarly, we used to have click, right? We have this input event as well. By passing the event object to this handler gives us an access to the value of this input. Let me quickly demonstrate this to you. Okay, yeah, sure. Cool. I'll take 1 more minute to show this. Then we will wrap. It was text input, right? Yes, text input. Handle change function. But you get it, right? We can have a function here. Let me declare enter function. Console.log event. It takes into account this similar. So I just say if input is another event similar to click. See, whenever any changes happens, this input gets triggered, and see, we getting all these values. We'll discuss that in the coming session. I'm just quickly saying this. Okay, I want you guys, since you guys will get started with Qtrip Dynamic and get registered, I also want you to try this activity, store user data. It's a very simple activity. If we will discuss that in the next session, but yeah. So Qtrip Dynamic, you will get started along with the store user data. You should be completed. That's it, guys. That's it for this session. I'm really sorry to keep you. What is handle change? Handle change is another method that I was supposed to write. So since I did not have time, I just created a function, arrow function inside. Yeah, Viswajit, go on. I have some doubt. If you don't have any doubt, please feel free to leave the meeting. People who have any doubts, please stay here. Okay.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Yeah, you're audible. Thank you guys for people who are here. Yes, Bisujit, tell me.
Yeah, we have seen that when we are adding event listener, right?
Mm-hmm.
We add the arguments are like event. One of the argument is event, and other is like a function, right? Callback function.
Yes. Yes.
My question is why we can't add directly the function itself? I mean,